Ever since I was young, I have dreamed of having abs. After thousands of failed attempts working 40 hours a week, getting home late, attending pointless meetings and having long commutes back from work, I was starting to think that this whole ab thing, maybe it just wasn't going to happen for me. But no matter how much I tried and failed, I still craved abs like a drug. But after losing and regaining the weight numerous times, here's what actually worked for me and the clients that I work with. As an overweight guy who was working, studying full-time and running a business. First, starting off hot and controversial, abs are not made in the kitchen. Well, kind of. The phrase that I have is that abs are made in the kitchen, but they are developed in the gym. But a huge disclaimer here, you cannot outwork a bad diet. And that brings me on to number 2, which is the biggest mistake that I see when people are trying to get abs. And that's that they spend hours doing ab crunches in their room and doing leg raises. Guess what? I did the same thing and I didn't see any abs. But all of that changed when I pulled all of that attention that I was doing into leg raises into my diet. But something really strange happened when I started to do that. I started getting a flat stomach, which was great, but I still didn't see any abs. A flat stomach was way better than where I was before, but it's not quite that crispy, clean, athletic set of abs that you see on the Nike adverts, you know? But here's the worst part. I got too obsessed, I took this too far, and I just ended up becoming skinny fat, and I was back in the cycle of just hating the way that I look. Now at this point, as you can imagine, I thought that all hope was lost until I combined the two methods of lowering my body fat percentage and training my abs. So if you're somebody that was in the chaotic position that I was in a couple of years back, here's everything I would do to get a proper set of abs. Now here's the craziest part about this conversation, because here's the thing, everybody on this planet walking the face of the earth right now has a set of abs. Whether you can see those abs or not is a completely different story. And I'm afraid you can do all the ab exercises in the world, but if your abs are not visible and your body fat isn't low enough, you're not going to see any ab action. So I've mentioned this term, reducing our body fat, but how do we actually do that? Well, the best way is going to be being in a caloric deficit, just eating less. That is all that is. But here's one thing you need to understand before we continue. The longer that you stay in a calorie deficit, the more fat that we are going to lose. And the more body fat that's lost means the more visible our abs are going to be post-transformation. But what is the best way to be in a calorie deficit? Well, here's another one of my controversial takes, which is becoming a very common theme on this channel. And I say it to the guys that watch this channel, I say it to the guys that I coach, I really don't care what it is you use. I don't care whether you're a guy who likes keto, if you're a guy who likes carnivore, that I give you flexibility with. See diets like this. All of them are a carb, right? The carb gets you from A to B. The diet is just the brand of the carb, okay? Keto could be BMW, carnivore could be McLaren, intermittent fasting could be Jaguar or Aston Martin, whatever it is you want it to be. But at the end of the day, what are all of those things? They're still carbs. They still get you from point A to point B. The only caveat that I will say with this is that when you're creating your diet strategy, make sure that when you're finished, you can honestly say to yourself, this is something that you could see yourself sticking to for the next 6 months. And that is how you know that you're in the money for having a sustainable diet that's going to take you through your transformation. Now, you know that I am a massive, massive fan of the strategy, and it's never let anybody down ever. And that strategy is going to be activity maxing, keeping our activity as high as possible, which will allow us to keep our food as high as possible. Why is this important? Because the number one reason why diets fail is because they're unsustainable. Why are they unsustainable? Because people are doing a shit ton of cardio, yes, but people are hating their diet lifestyle. Activity maxing solves this because we have enough food so we feel full and satiated throughout the day, but more importantly, it gives us enough fuel, it gives us enough energy to really push in our workouts and squeeze the maximum performance out of ourselves when we're on a fat loss journey. Now, as I briefly mentioned the gym, I think it's only right to let you know what we're going to be doing in there. And if you're starting out on this journey, I recommend 3 days a week following a push-pull leg split. It has never failed me, any of my clients. It is just the golden ticket. Like, you can't mess this up. Now, what about the actual activity? We're going to be walking from 10 to 15,000 steps a day, and we are not adding a cardio session like running or any kind of sport until later on in your fat loss journey, where we need to crank up that calorie burn a little bit more. I made the huge mistake of adding a shit ton of cardio into my fat loss routine at the very beginning, not focusing on weight training, not eating enough protein. And guess what? I became skinny fat. It's not a fun place to be. So please take this slow, take it steady. But younger me didn't know that because I was very impatient and I had no sense of deferred gratification. But you're not me and you're going to succeed, providing that you follow this advice. Before I forget, as a general rule of thumb, we're going to subtract anywhere from 250 to 500 calories, or from your maintenance calories when you're creating your diet. And of course, since this video is about abs, we are going to be doing some ab training in the gym. This doesn't have to be anything complex. It just could be the ab crunch machine or some leg raises, and you train them like any other muscle. It is that simple. But now I want to share with you one of the most underrated ab training techniques that I was doing on my fat loss journey without me even realizing that I was doing it. And this is a concept that isn't taught amongst other coaches and people on YouTube because it's very unconventional. But let me break it down to you. The concept is called indirect ab training. What does this mean? Well, it's in the name. You see, when I first started going to the gym, I was obsessed with just getting big biceps. That's all I wanted. So I'd go into the gym 4 to 5 times a week, just bicep, 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 like a complete buffoon, just completely neglecting the rest of my body. And I don't know if you've ever done a bicep curl, but next time you do a bicep curl, focus on this because this is where indirect ab training comes into play. When you're lifting up that weight, you notice something, nothing to do with your arms, but maybe something to do with your midsection. Can you simulate the movement now? Can you feel anything? Imagine doing that with weight. What are we doing? We're training our biceps, obviously, but you're also tensing your core. And if you're like me, once you get to those heavy sets and those reps where things are getting really tough, you tend to squeeze and crunch your core very tightly. Indirect ab training is what I attribute a lot of my ab success to, because when I was in the gym training biceps every single day, I was also training a lot of my core. Bearing in mind that I have a background in Muay Thai and MMA, there was a lot of core workout and core stuff that was going on behind the scenes that I wasn't even aware of. So indirect ab training is just where your abs and your core are being worked, but it's not the sole intention for it to be worked. Now, there's a huge problem with this method because we can't really track it and it's a bit of an afterthought. We're not putting too much intention behind it, therefore we can't expect it to get huge results. But I thought, since I was making a video about my ab story and my ab experience, indirect ab training is just a very personal thing to me and my situation. But I still think it's important to mention. Doing this is how I became lean, I became more confident, and I finally saw my abs for the first time, and it has truly changed my life. The way I walk into a room, at your job, when you're meeting people, when you're making good first impressions, do this and you're going to get the abs that you want. Now, I have reopened the one-to-one coaching. You can fill out an application. The link is going to be in the pinned comment. If I get back to you, then congrats. I see potential and I would love to work with you. And the video on screen has been recommended by YouTube, and they think that this is going to be the best logical step for you to lose your first 10 pounds. So I don't know why you wouldn't watch it.